Welcome back to the Perfect Lap Podcast. I'm Mark Jager. This is Mark Kilgore. He goes by Kilgore. I go by Jager. And today we have the amazingly awesome announcer man himself, Kyle Heyer. Today, oh man, we got him. And guess what he's going to do, guys? He's going to do what he does best. He's going to talk to us about Time Attack. And more importantly, we're going to talk about Gridlife, his journey into all of your guys' lives and how he tells your stories. All right. Hey, how's it going, Kyle? How's your day going?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's a pleasure to be on here, guys. I know this was a little bit in waiting, and I appreciate the flexibility with the time change on you last minute, but I'm so stoked.
Dude, anytime. It's great to have you on. Obviously, one of those things, we all got busy lives. We got things going. And it's almost the holidays, so we all get a little bit of a reprieve, a little bit of a break. I mean, technically speaking, I live in Southern California, so there's really no break for Time Attack out here. Guys are still out here driving. I mean, I was out on the track on Saturday. Man,
That's
it's
awesome.
how's the weather there again, Kyle?
It's
What'd you say
terrible. It's awful. It's 4 degrees outside, and what happens in Chicago every year is it snows late November, and then it just freezes like that, and you're just driving over ruts in alleyways for 6 months.
Jager, have you got your cactus with Christmas lights hung up around it? Is that what you guys do in SoCal?
Cactus Christmas tree all up. It's ready to go. Then I got a couple fake Christmas trees too. You know, gotta be in the spirit of the Christmas vacay land. So, all right, guys. Well, we're gonna get going with Kyle, and we're gonna start it off as we usually do. We go into a little bit of a history lesson, and we're gonna jump in with Kyle to understand how Kyle became Kyle, aka the voice of Gridlife. And I'm just gonna say this, right? Like, anybody who's ever listened to Gridlife, anybody who's ever been, anywhere remotely close to Time Attack, right? His voice is synonymous with Time Attack now. You are absolutely a star when it comes to the Time Attack world. So kind of break it down a little bit for us. How did you wind up with Gridlife? How did you get tooled up with these Michigan boys and doing all these things?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. I'm starting year 6 now with Gridlife, and I don't really have much of a history in grassroots racing before this. I was a fan of motorsports from, as a kid, I went to Watkins Glen with the friend down the street that took me there when I was 9 or 10. And I would watch NASCAR, IndyCar, a little Grand Am here and there. And Grand Am was kind of got me into road racing and interested in road racing. And names like
Grand Am is awesome.
Yeah, Greg Creamer, Calvin Fish, like those are the voices I grew up with, right? I was always interested in engineering. And so I went to school for electrical engineering. And then a couple of years in, I switched to computer engineering, and I wasn't like stoked with how things were going. I was learning real quick that like I was good at math in high school, not so good at math in college. My roommate turned out that he was an iRacer, and one winter we're like, we should, bring our wheels into the dorms, and we should build PCs and kind of get back into iRacing. And so we did that for a little while, and then he saw a Reddit post where there was this group that was asking for some new, they wanted to get their races streamed. And they're like, we'll take someone new. We don't have that much money to give, but we'll give it a try with someone that wants to try it. And Finian, my roommate, convinced me that we should try this. I thought it was a horrible idea, but I did a little research and the software and things that we needed to do it. And our first broadcast was in 2018, and it was recorded. So we basically announced the replay. And it's the worst thing you've ever seen or heard in your entire. It's terrible. We got paid like $7 each, and they liked it so much.
We gotta go find this.
No, it's. I think maybe the second one I think we deleted the first one, but the second one is still there on my. The channel's called SimTV SYM, and they invited us back and back again and back again, and pretty soon we were doing this from our dorm room after classes, and we ended up kind of meeting mutual friends that were racing in different leagues. And one of the people that was racing was DJ Alessandrini, which is a name you guys might recognize. He was racing with the SCCA, had just gotten his comp license. And he was also just dabbling with Gridlife because he had just got that Civic that he ended up kind of getting given to him as a gift. DJ brought the SCCA's virtual DC region league to us, and we streamed them for a little while. We actually did that for 4 or 5 years, but we continued to get connected. I met Tom O'Gorman through that. And that was kind of it for a little while. We just did the sim racing stuff. Pandemic rolls around, and I think just to preface this a little bit, because I jump out of order because where things really took off. But in 2019, GLTC started, and Tom and DJ and Erica Till and Rob Wilkinson and a couple other people hit me up on Facebook Messenger. They said, "Hey, we have this new thing called GLTC. We see what you're doing. You've streamed a couple Gridlife at the time. It was called Track Midwest, a couple Track Midwest League races. Why don't you come do this for real at Midwest this year?" Never heard of Gridlife besides, the guys that kind of had time attacked in it before. So I drove all the way out to Michigan from Rochester, New York, and I rolled in the gate, and I think it was Bill Griffin at the gate, another name you guys might recognize. But I was talking to Adam on the phone because I didn't know anybody, and Bill rolls up. He goes, "Are you Kyle? I recognize your voice." And I'm like, "Whoa, okay,
Yes.
this is wild." So I ended up I just effectively volunteered my time that weekend, did my first real race, which was a blast. I had so much fun. It felt very natural to me. And so, went home the rest of 2019. I think I came back for Gridlife South and kind of stumbled through that. It was a lot more time attack, and I wasn't great at that. We'll come back to that. So pandemic rolls around, and I get a call from Robbie Montanola, who is the senior marketing director of GT World Challenge America. And he had been given my name from Tom O'Gorman, who used to race in Pirelli World Challenge, because Robbie wanted to start SRO's esports league during the pandemic. So I ended up kind of running Gridlife's pandemic Miata League, and I was also running and announcing SRO's esports league, which was really a step into the kind of the pro racing world. And in the middle of the pandemic, they fired up racing again, and they invited me out to Sonoma, and I started my career and doing some announcing for GT World Challenge. I was working sort of doing white labeled streams for CrowdStrike Racing, so I was kind of doing a small project that was because they couldn't bring their customers to the racetrack anymore. So I was doing like a custom live stream for their guys. While that was happening, I spent most of 2020 just kind of showing up at Gridlife, announcing for free and for fun. And October rolled around, and I think I emailed Chris and I said, "Hey, I'd love to do some like video edits and stuff. If you could give me like the keys to the castle to like a Dropbox or something." And he replied with a job offer and he's like, "You need to move to Chicago within 2 weeks." And I was living with my parents at the time because post-graduate, I graduated in 2020, living at home because like who's going to go get a job in the middle of all this? I was streaming on the side. My mom was very disappointed.
Sorry, were you in New York? Are you originally from New York? You mentioned Watkins Glen, so I assumed you were around from that area.
Yeah, born and raised Rochester, New York. Went to college in Binghamton, and then so Chicago was I never even considered living there, and here's a job offer in my inbox for enough to convince me to move to Chicago. And I called up my other boss, Robbie, and I said, "Hey, like Gridlife just offered me this thing. I know because I'd been working contract for them for a couple of months." And he's like, "What are they paying you?" And so I had an opportunity. I didn't do it because like I'm a loyal guy to the people that that bring me up into the world. But I didn't take Robbie's counter offer, and I ended up working at Gridlife. And so that's how I got into the world. And I was originally brought in to be the announcer and handle all the esports stuff, which was really big at that time. And my role has shifted from there. And I kept working at SRO contract until this year, actually. So I just wanted to focus more on Gridlife stuff. Hopefully that's the all-inclusive Kyle's journey.
So cool.
How I guess you could say, how would you put into perspective like the delta between SRO, Gridlife, and like what would you put there as like the biggest delta?
I think there's a lot of similar energies, right? I think race car drivers are race car drivers to some extent. The worlds feel more similar than you'd think from an operational perspective. I think it's just the dollar signs are bigger everywhere. So the team at SRO is probably 5 or 6 times that of Gridlife's in terms of scale. And I think when you look at an entry fee for something like TC America, I think they're kind of again 5 to 6 times. When you get into GT3 stuff, it really scales up big. So they're just playing with bigger dollars and customers that have built really big companies, and they're on a different path, I think, than the average grassroots racer. But I think there's a lot that we can learn from SRO because the IMSA is a whole other level beyond that, right? I think SRO is a lot more like Gridlife than IMSA is like Gridlife, right? It's a pretty scrappy company, and I really love all the people I worked with there for a long time. They were like a second family I got to see. Chris Stewart would joke that I was going to see Uncle Robbie this weekend, and he's got the bouncy house and the castle. And because, you go out, you eat nice dinners there, right? Nice team dinners all the time. And the budgets are a little higher. So it's just a different experience.
You got to wear your white collared shirt,
the white collar, which, that is not the Gridlife vibe.
No,
I got made fun of a lot in the SRO attire in the Gridlife world. So
haters going to hate, man. Haters going to hate.
There was a time, I think 2020, Midwest was in the fall that year because of the pandemic. And the Indy 8-hour was also in the same weekend. And so I actually split my time between the two events. And I started the week up at Indy Tuesday, Wednesday, helping them set up. And then I drove up to Michigan Friday, Saturday at Gridlife. And then I drove back down on Sunday for the 8-hour. I left
That's awesome.
Michigan at 4 a.m. or something to make the start of the race. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we were talking, this is more of your broadcasting, more GLTC talk than Time Attack, but we were just having the conversation. I think this was probably 2-3 weeks ago. And it's just so interesting to kind of see the progress of racing in general. We always know that this is the route it always takes, but what was pro racing, let's call it really 20 years ago. I was going to say, 10 years ago, but I'm like, well, no, that's only 2015. So really like 20 years ago, right?
Yeah.
But we were having the conversation. You mentioned Greg Creamer. We were reminiscing on the Gridlife Discord about speed vision and speed and like all of those cars from way back then in like the late 90s, early 2000s. And we were all sort of seeing like that GLTC and GLGT is now basically that at that level, right? So what was considered pro back in, the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, right? Like that is now sort of where Gridlife has moved into, just 25 years later. But it was just so interesting and so funny, like going back and watching some of the old videos. And I was like, man, like if you just had if you just put an old school filter on the GLTC, like this could straight up be, you could be watching Speed Vision. And it took me back, and so many people got brought up sort of into the fold of motorsports on, as you mentioned, Grand Am, Speed Vision, Speed, GT America, all of those things. And it's just interesting to kind of see where how grassroots motorsports fills in and follows the pro racing. The pro racing keeps getting better and faster, but so does grassroots motorsport.
Yeah, I think the vision, what Gridlife is really, the march that has happened really is the presentation of the sport, right? I think if you look at the rule books from the last 10 years, I find that people have optimized the rules, but they really haven't fundamentally changed all that much, but the cars look totally different now. And there's a lot of optimization that happens, but why does that optimization happen? Why are people taking it to the edge like that? And it's because the presentation of the sport is a professional presentation. The rules are still, and the enforcement sometimes can still feel very grassroots. And you can still build a car in your garage if you're talented and you've got the resources behind you. You can still do that, but it's presented like a pro motorsport. And I think that's one of the challenges that you have to kind of fight against is like, where do you stop, right? Because at some point, the difference between your average GLTC driver and your average, even SRO driver or IMSA driver, like the income gap is significant there, right? So at some point, there's like this valley of, where there's a kind of a no-go zone, and you kind of have to figure out where the balance is, because to provide all this presentation, it costs money. And it doesn't necessarily add anything other than, I joke about exposure, air quotes, to the driver, right? But when you're building a program, that stuff matters. So, you could absolutely not stream it. You could absolutely not write articles about it and not take pictures of it. And it could exist in its pocket of space. And I think it could be successful like that, but only doing that, right? Growing it and turning it into like Speed Vision World Challenge is the presentation part. And that can sometimes be what costs a lot of money too.
Absolutely.
And that's why Speed World Challenge isn't around anymore, or has merged into other things that look more like traditional pro racing, Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned, obviously teams being much bigger, more money, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's something that always makes me love the grassroots motorsports more, because you as the announcer for Gridlife, when you start talking about a team in grassroots motorsports, a lot of the time you know exactly who that team is and you can name those off usually in less than a couple syllables because it's only a few people. And so it's very awesome to be able to see how you can basically commentate and talk about not only the driver, but also the teammates, the guys who are helping put tires on and tune motors and stuff like that, because it is such a small team. So yeah, I mean, just
I think it's like F1 in the 60s, right? Like it's so gritty.
Yes.
And I've had opportunities, SRO a couple of times was like, hey, come work for us. And I had those opportunities, and I eventually, I considered them a lot, I'll be honest, but like I turned them down because the mission that Gridlife is on is an important one to me. Like I find like the grassroots grit fascinating. Like the fact that like Eric Catil is like an entire Le Mans team on his own blows my mind. Like it's so cool. And that's why I want to present it like it's Le Mans, like it's IMSA, like it's F1, because we can make it look like that. Like what did Enzo Ferrari say? Like it doesn't cost anything more to make something beautiful. Like it does cost a little more, but
Yeah.
it is, we're taking something that typically isn't put in this on this broad platform, and we're making it accessible to watch and to make kids fall in love with like that cool dude with the dirty hands that was under his car changing his transmission 10 minutes before the race started. Like that's cool. And I love IMSA. I love SRO. I watch a lot of racing. That gets lost a little bit at those higher levels where, and this is to say nothing against those drivers, but like they're just maintain real nice, super athletic. They're athletes in all their own right. They climb behind the wheel and they execute their role. But a dude doing everything himself is so special, or she, right, in this age too. Like they're across the board. There's tons of impressive stories in the paddock, right?
And that's the thing that really gets to me is I love hearing those stories. It's imperative to me that like when I watch the live stream, getting that level of detail and understanding. I come from the history aspect of like Time Attack, where when I see things like at Laguna, right, when I watch Mike from Stance Works and I hear the story of like him having to, pull a transmission and have all like I thrive on his YouTube channel of watching all the strife and turmoil with that car for the last year. That's what I live for.
Did you know that our pit lane reporter helped pull that engine out?
I saw. I saw.
Which again, that's like that's why Gridlife is so cool. It's like this hands-on nature too, right? I came in as an announcer, but very quickly, I can get my hands dirty helping out driver. I've lent parts of my own personal car to competitors to like. I love that. I think that's so cool, and it's important that you kind of keep Gridlife sells community, right? That's so important, and because when things look this pro, you get the attitudes of people start to shift that direction, and things can sort of feel less warm and cuddly. But it's like important that we keep that together, because that's really what we're all kind of on the same mission here together. None of us are crushing it, right? Like I drive an old Corolla, right? And we're like Adam drives a $5,000 bus from 1970. It's just we're all on the same mission, right?
Yeah. Well, and I feel like it's so easy to kind of lose sight of that, and I get it. Because that's one thing, man. You've mentioned a couple things I want to hit on, but just to finish off this point, which is, I love Luke McGrew. Obviously, we competed together, and I totally understand his point of view. And in 90%, for 90%, I agree with it. And he always says, like, look, at the end of the day, we all have jobs. We all go back to work on Monday. And honestly, nobody remembers who really won the championship like 4 or 5 years ago. Right. And like, we do have to remember that. At the same time, it always makes me a little annoyed because I'm like, look, at the same time, like, I get that it's a plastic trophy, but those plastic trophies really mean a lot to people. They signify a lot of dedication and hard work, as well as the competition. Like it is not easy. And I think once you actually win, or you get on the podium, much less you even win a championship, you realize the amount of work and dedication it took for these people to do that. It's not like, well, whoever just shows up, and has a little bit of talent, they're going to win. Like you've got to really put in the time and the energy and the effort. And so it's such a balance, and it's just one of those things. I think it's one of those things that, like, at the same time, Gridlife has to accept it. I am always so um appreciative, but also not really surprised, but like just whenever I see Adam or Chris or Mike, post something on Facebook or on Discord, right? They always are very thoughtful. And I say the same thing about, like, for the SCCA, John Hunter and Hayward Wagner. Like, these people get hate mail all the time. And it's so surprising to me that I'm like, I can't believe that they just haven't thrown the towel in and been like, you know what? Screw you guys. We're trying to help you guys out. We're not out here to make everybody's life miserable. We're not out here trying to make a buck. We're out here trying to have some fun and have a place for you guys to come compete and have a good time.
Yeah.
And if you guys aren't going to appreciate that, then you know what? We're going to take our ball and we're going to go home. We're going to go find somewhere else. So, like,
Yeah.
it's just it's a balance, and we as drivers, we have to keep that in mind. And I know that when you're sitting behind your keyboard, it's so easy to just start, just like when we were talking about with the 2026 schedule a couple episodes ago, everybody freaking out. Oh, this is ridiculous. That they're just at it for all the money. And it's just not true. It's just not true.
I've been in the war room plenty of times when there's a post that like hits the algorithm just right, and you're like, oh my gosh, notifications, right? And I'll creep into Slack and go, hey guys, I want to take a look at this, right? And I can tell you, because I've been in these conversations, every time that there's like mass feedback like that, I mean, Adam, Michael, Chris, they're all reading everything and they all take it to heart. Like, none of these guys are like, screw that guy. Like, that doesn't happen ever. So, it's when things like the schedule come out or rules changes that people aren't stoked about. There seems to be sometimes this consensus that like Gridlife doesn't care about the little guy or XYZ, which is a thing that we see a lot. Like that stinks for us to hear, because like that's certainly not the goal ever. But every time you make a decision, like there are benefits to those decisions and there are detriments to those decisions, things that affect the competitors negatively. And sometimes, actually all the time, it's a huge balance of, what the company needs to continue. And in this case, the schedule is a great example of that. Everybody loves Mid-Ohio. It's probably one of the best racetracks for our level of competition in the country. But for a variety of reasons, it just doesn't make sense if we could continue putting on that event, but it would continue to like suck the life out of like other ones and keep us from moving forward, right? So it's not, we never say goodbye to racetracks permanently. And, like Road America's not on the schedule next year. I love Road America. It's my second favorite racetrack in the country, but it will be back at some point. It's just, it was gone in 22 because of the repaving project. We brought it back, right? Watkins Glen in 2023. We didn't ever, I certainly thought we were never going back there after what was a pretty awful weekend, weather and otherwise, but we're back, and we're back with a vengeance this time with a full festival. It'll be the same scale as Road America. So there's, every time that we take something, we'll give it back somewhere else, right? It's going to be a trade-off always, because it has to be. It's a small org, but all these orgs are really small. None of these organizations have hundreds of employees, right? So it's just when people say Gridlife is doing this, it's like 6 people, right? It's like we could sit at a dinner table together.
Big corporate giant is screwing me.
And I think also like, Michael, when he came on board, I've talked with Michael about this. I've talked to Chris about this. Like, it's really easy for everyone to see like, oh, new CEO, oh, he's the reason for all the bad decisions. It's just like not actually true. And I can tell you from the backside, my cat's nail is stuck in my hoodie. The backside of that is just from a numbers perspective. Like, again, no one's slaying it, but there's sustainability is like in the horizon, right? Which is something that could not have been said 2 years ago. So
for sure,
that means a lot of good things. And I think people will be surprised at PRI to hear about some of the things that we're working on and some of the things that will benefit them in their wallets and, in their programs. So I think there's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a very interesting and exciting attribute to how Gridlife, like you said, when people talk about like Gridlife as a whole is this like big entity, and then you're like, really talking about this small organism.
Yeah.
And I know I'll be first to say, like, it is one of those things as a racer, we look at things as we oversimplify, and we try to we as I've said before, we go like this. We go, well, you're not going to the track that's closest to me. So, oh, you're screwing me. I'm never going to go back, blah, blah, blah. Like, we all tend to have that kind of attitude. And that's where, we as a whole need to band together and just look at it from a perspective of like you said, understand that there's no like trying to screw somebody out of this. It's trying to just survive, trying
Yeah.
to keep and grow this series, trying to make things better.
Yeah, and I think also there, as far as feedback is concerned, right? Every year, we at least typically we send out a poll and we'll kind of ask, where do people want to go? What tracks do people like? What tracks don't people like? And you've seen the schedule shift towards more of these larger, more significant to pop culture circuits, right? The Road Americas, the Watkins Glens, the Lime Rocks, the Lagunas. It's because the drivers want to go there. And if you look at the entry list sizes for, like Carolina Motorsports Park is a great racetrack for us, but it doesn't quite garner the same entries as a place like Road Atlanta. Again, that's a little tricky because it's not really our event, but the scales are different, right? People really want to sign up to a Road America or a Watkins Glen, even if it costs more. The other feedback that we got in the past was these events are too close together. So the result of kind of merging both of those things is you get a schedule that hits all of these really significant racetracks. And I throw Gingerman in as significant to time attack culture in the Midwest. You have all these the schedule is fantastic from like cherry picking some of the best circuits in the country, and they're all spaced out about a month apart. So
we did notice that
it's obviously like less local if you live in Illinois. Like there's only one event within 4 hours of me, right? Or the office. Like it's not close for us either. But with more time between events, the hope is that you can sort of build your program, travel a little bit further, but you're at these really spectacular circuits. And also running 9 events a year like isn't really sustainable for us or for the drivers. And so there's a little bit of like, hey guys, don't do that because you're going to burn yourself out so fast. Like plan out your events, go to the ones that you can make and like have a runway to do this. And don't like, we saw Jeremy Swenson. Like I love that guy so much. He did 9 events one year and it's so many events, right?
Yeah.
So
that's tough.
Yeah. And tough. It makes it hard to like write points structures that make sense too, because you have to make that after round 5, like it doesn't matter anymore. But what's the incentive for people getting tickets? Okay, well now you have to make everyone run 10 events. Like it doesn't. There's so many things you have to factor in, right?
And just to confirm, just because when I looked at the schedule and I did a quick glance, obviously when I look on your guys' website, I see festival, and then I see special stage, festival, at the Summer Apex at the Glen, Circuit Legends, Laguna Festival. Are all of them festival? Are some of them?
So I'll clarify this because I think this is one of the things that maybe we probably could have messaged better about, especially with the Watkins Glen change. Last year we did away with the club circuit festival tour concept, and just Michael was like, everything's a Gridlife, right? So everything's a Gridlife. We're sort of separating events now into events that have music and those that don't. So the only 2 events that will not is Road Atlanta. It's not really our event to play in. We're getting track time as we did last year, and Lime Rock because we just can't because of restrictions there. So Lime Rock will look the same as it always has, with the festival sort of being car culture centric. And Road Atlanta, I think this day schedule might shift, but it's going to look similar to last year. Everything else is full scale, full fledged festival, including Watkins Glen, which will get the same amount of resources that Road America got last year. So that'll be, and Chris is talking about some pretty cool stuff as far as the stage and like how it's going to be laid out. It will not look like it did in 2023. So I'm really excited as a New York native. I think that event's going to crush.
I don't remember if I said this on our 2026 episode or not, but I think this is my own personal opinion. I think Watkins Glen is a better track than Road America.
I agree. Road America is great, but
Road America is great, but I am excited to see time attack at Watkins Glen. I think I have said this, even though I've never driven it. I think Watkins Glen, other than it being in like upstate New York and it's difficult for a lot of people to get to, I wish that track was located somewhere else. In terms of, I think it could be one of the best tracks for time attack. It has everything, but it's also it's big enough. It's an important enough a track that there is some grandeur to it. And so when you're there, no offense to Gingerman, yes, or the Button Willows, right? Both of those are small club tracks. They have a lot of importance in U.S. time attack culture, as you mentioned, but neither one. The only reason people go is because of the records. if you just ask people to go just to run the track, it's you're not going to get a lot of people to show up. But if you say, oh, hey, we can go to, insert any one of Gridlife's tracks, Lime Rock, Watkins Glen, Road America, Road Atlanta, Laguna, right, whatever.
Yep.
That's why, and as you said, like, that's why people want to go. I can't wait to see the time attack cars jump in the curbs at bus stop. It's going to be wild. It's going to be awesome.
We sold out the driver tickets last time in 2023 so fast. And again, you can support really big fields there too. And, on top of that, with Watkins Glen, you mentioned it's a fast racetrack. Michelin does a lot of their tire testing for IMSA at Watkins Glen because it has the highest lateral grip of any racetrack in the country, which is really cool. I have a quick story on Watkins Glen. The last time we were there in 23, we still have the partnership with Hyundai N. So we had an Elantra N 6-speed that I was driving to all the events that year to act as a pace car and kind of a support vehicle. And we did a couple of kind of onboard like lap tour videos, some of which didn't really make it to air, the Watkins Glen one included. I had Creature in the back seat. Creature's our videographer at Gridlife. He had a shoulder-mounted camera in the back seat. I had Greg Creamer in the right seat. And I grew up around Watkins Glen, but I'd never done a lap of speed there. And all I got was one flying lap at the beginning of the first session of the weekend. So I had an out, a full speed lap, and an in lap. That was it. And I looked at the speedo, did 124 into the braking zone in the bus stop with 3 people in the car on stock tires and stock brakes. It was so much fun. That video, I got to dig that out somewhere because it never made it to the stream. We didn't have any GoPros mounted or anything, but man, what a wicked experience. I think my lap time was like, there was one other Elantra N there that weekend in street class, and I was probably 11 or 12 seconds off, which I was really proud of on stock tires with 3 guys in the car. So it was a lot of fun. Awesome. It was cool.
You just made me think of something. Which Jager did this a couple of years, maybe last year or a couple of years ago at the Ridge. You and Cuban jumped in a car, and I really enjoyed that segment. I thought it was really good. As Jager often says, we just throw out ideas on this podcast to whoever comes on.
Sure.
So I've got a couple ideas for you, which is one, I think that maybe you should consider, like, at every race, maybe you grab a wheel-to-wheel racer and you put them in the car, like in a pace car or in a van or whatever with you, and you drive around the track and they narrate, right? And they kind of tell you what they're looking for, things they're watching out for. Here's the brake zone. You can't go 2 wide here. We were 3 wide here. Things like that. And then I think you should also then get a time attacker in there and have them talk about, the track, what they're looking for, speeds they're reaching, things like that. Like, I think, again, I know there's downtime, so you could just kind of throw some of this stuff in there occasionally, but maybe you don't have to do both on the same weekend. Maybe you do one weekend, a different one the next weekend. I think that would just be interesting. I always find it interesting hearing from some of the drivers, right? Like, getting sort of behind the scenes and how they are looking at the track. And I think that would also be fun for the fans to actually see that sort of driver POV as they're going around the track.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to get them in the same weekend just because I think they'd have different things to say.
Yeah,
and I think that would be interesting to see the contrast, but that's actually a great idea.
For sure,
yeah.
for sure.
If you had a big enough van, you put them both in the car.
There you go. And you put a drifter in there too. They're like, you all are doing this wrong.
I don't even know what you're looking at. I just spin the wheel, hit the gas.
I look out the right side window typically.
Exactly. Yeah. I was gonna say the other thing, the other idea I had. You guys were talking about, or Kyle, you were mentioning, how buttoned up the pro drivers tend to be, right? They got their race suits on, they got their, hats on, and they're standing by their car, and they're always ready because they're never working on the car, right? They're talking with their driver coach, getting massages, looking over data, making sure they get their carbs, drinking, and then ready to go back in the car. I think that, and I love it when you guys go into the paddock and you talk to people. I think that, like, there should definitely be a couple times where you see someone like just work, it's a driver, you wanted to talk to them, but they're working on the car. You just kind of need to spring it on them and be like, hey, Jager, I see you're under the car. What are you doing? Like, what's going on? Like, actually kind of show more of that grassroots mentality that these drivers are literally in the grass, in the sand,
Yep.
on the pavement, under their car, trying to fix it, get ready for the next session, and kind of have a little bit more of that spontaneity in terms of, look, it's not just people standing around waiting, okay, all buttoned up, ready to go, but like I'm coming out from under the car and I've got grease on my, hands and then, big streak across, my forehead from where I just hit my, just hit the transmission, stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, we touched on this a little bit pre-show, but at Laguna Seca this year, one of my buddies, Jonathan Grace, came in to help us out with the pit reporting, and he got thrown into that role 3 days before the broadcast. Had never been to a Gridlife, didn't even know what it was, and he did a fantastic job. And I'm not sure if we'll be graced, to make a pun, by his presence next year, but I hope to get people like that are really able to dive into things. And if he was more up to speed quicker, his full-time job that entire weekend was to go find stuff. And he wasn't really yet comfortable with all the competitors and really didn't know how to necessarily look for stuff like that. But, you keep bringing someone recurring in that role. That's a really high value thing. And to touch more on that technology of like being able to roam the paddock and even do that in real time didn't exist with our broadcast team until this past year. That was something that had historically been really challenging to not only find, but also to get live. And then if you record it, like maybe you'd bank 10 or 12 of these things, but then trying to figure out when is it contextual to like slot it in, that was tricky. So new broadcast team in 2025, they did a phenomenal job. Project Prime out of Florida. I really didn't know what we were going to get at CMP, and I was pretty blown away when I left that weekend. We also completely redid our graphics overlays in 3 weeks prior to that event. Because our graphics were previously owned by the other team that we used. So we had to start all over again, which ended up being a really positive thing for reasons we can dive into. But that was a big leap, and that team has brought a lot of really cool tech. We hope every year to bring something new. So again, it's like, the possibility for onboards. Onboards are really, really, really hard. I
Yes.
cannot, everyone's like, yeah, it'll be great to have some onboards. It's like, I know, but it's like at SRO, they got onboards, more reliably a couple of years ago. That is thousands of dollars per car per weekend for the system that they have. So it's just not feasible. So, but Project Prime is really, really good. They're on the cutting edge of technology. I actually, because I work in both broadcast worlds, the SRO broadcast team was like peeping at the Instagram of Project Prime to see what they were doing, because they're kind of upsetting this notion that like grassroots broadcast has to look grassroots. At times, it really looked like a pro show last year, and we're super proud of that.
Yes.
Oh, I I can't stress enough how good the live stream looked. You were talking about the graphics change and stuff like that. Obviously, there's a lot of us that were probably watching that, and one thing that I really, really appreciate is just the overall graphics on the side showing the different classing and how they all group together. Makes it extremely more entertaining, keeps you more up to date, especially because, the way that how normal people would look at timing is they would go, and apparently we have to look at Speed Hive now or something.
We're going
like
to fix that too for next year. I can talk more about that
Well,
later.
let's hear more about that, because I was looking at Speed Hive, and as someone just watching this event, I was like, who's winning?
Yeah.
Purple. I have no clue what's going on. That
Yeah.
was the most to stress it a little bit, to physically be at the event and be a spectator physically at the event was so difficult to understand, like who was in what position, because it's time attack. I can't just look over and go, he's in the front of the pack, he won. We don't have that. And so it was extremely difficult as being me of the Perfect Lap podcast to try to go to the event and to try to be like, oh, I need to go look at someone who broke a record. I have no clue who unless, so I'll pass it over to you. Give us
we're kind of jumping ahead here, because I think the broadcast point, there's on the graphics side, I'll touch on that, and then we can talk about how we're going to plan to fix some of those things. The graphics project, I've been really passionate about motorsport graphics, because in the iRacing days when I started doing that, I built all of our graphics for that, and that was using a software that was configured, that already connected the data points for you. You just had to design it. Working at Gridlife, starting in 2022 is when we got kind of the refreshed, the ticker that kind of looks like we have now. And that was something I got to design, but I didn't get to actually put it into practice. I didn't have the skills to do that. So the team at Specialty Field, which was our group back then, they built everything. I just got to like draw it up in Illustrator. When we moved away from that team and that technology, we had to rebuild it. So I was connected to Wes Ratcliffe, who used to work at USAC. He has a company called Volare, and his company specializes effectively in building timing and scoring connectors that allow you to connect Orbits, which is the timing software, to graphics systems. And his whole idea is like, graphics systems for motorsport cost a ton of money. Vizrt or Cloudbase, all these other companies that provide graphics, it could be $60,000 a year for the license to operate these graphic systems. And they're very powerful. There's a huge learning curve. There's other places that will design a package for you for like $10,000, but then you got to like hire their guy to run them. So none of those systems were going to work for us. So Wes, his whole thing is like, we basically contracted him to build us a graphics package based on our designs, but also Kyle gets to come along and learn how you do it too. And so he basically rents us his connecting software that connects the timing system, and that's how he makes his money. And now he basically built the bones of our system, and now I can, on myself, continue to iterate and edit and add functions and build on what we've learned. So going into CMP, that was like the bare bones package. And then by the time we got to Midwest, I was kind of getting in my groove with adding new things. And as the year went on, there was some more and more things that kind of got rolled into that. And I really, really like doing that. So there's going to be plenty more next year. One of the big things for you, Jager, is I'm working really, really hard in the background on getting manufacturer logos in the timing and scoring pipeline.
Yes.
Reading car models is another thing that we plan on doing, but logos are really nice to look at. Getting licensing for all of them is challenging. It doesn't always cost money. So, there's a couple brands that have already support us. There's some that I've worked with in other paddocks that have already granted us permission, but it would look weird if there was only 3 brands, right? So I'm still working on that. I don't know if it'll make CMP, but like the graphics are so important, because if you take the graphics away from a broadcast, you just have footage of cars and it all looks the same. Right. So the graphics are your visual identity. They're how you interact. They're how you know what's going on. They're so important. And it's a really, really powerful thing that we can edit those indefinitely forever. And like I told everyone last year, it's going to look like Sky Sports by the time I'm done with this. I'm really stoked.
That's what I'm talking about. Well, and to your point, one, I have to stroke my own ego, because I will say I helped Kyle get some feedback on the class cards that show up, kind of here's the class, here's the breakdown. But part of that was, one, I love the driver pictures, right? Being able to actually show the drivers. But also, like,
it's a lot of work, Mark.
I know. I know. Constant emails. You got to show up. You got to show up. Bring your driver's suit. Show up and look reasonable.
Yep.
But then also being able to show the car with the driver or associate it with the driver, so that people could start to understand and figure out and know, like, whoever, Alan Patton is this black Corvette, Jackie Ding's this blue M2, etc. Which is another reason that you need a good livery on your car, so that people can identify who your car is. Another black Corvette and Street GT is just another black Corvette.
Yeah. So, going back to your point about, the I guess the timing and scoring stuff, this is kind of a good segue with the driver pictures and things. One of the things I ran into pretty quick with this new graphics system is database stuff. So previously, all of the forms and driver information was held in Torque Hub, and Torque Hub was designed to be sort of the all-inclusive solution for tickets and driver stuff and scrutineering and all these things. It's pretty tricky, because Torque Hub wasn't designed for Gridlife. It was designed for a whole bunch of different not even sanctioning bodies. It's just a ticketing platform, and it has some custom forms built into it. It was never going to be granular enough to do what we needed it to do. So, when I went to go, put all these driver and car pictures in, I needed like a database of to where I could dump things, because you can't just like link to Dropbox or Google Drive. And if you put all the images in the code, it slows everything down. So I talked to Torque Hub, and they kind of put everything in a database for me, so I could reference the pictures in the broadcast, dynamically do that with the timing system. But we ran into a problem when I wanted to add more graphics, because the timing system doesn't give you things like the vehicle make and model. It'll give you that when you export like the spreadsheet. But there is a different level of orbits that costs a lot more money, where they prevent you from adding all these other data points into the scoreboard feed that goes out to Speed Hive or whatever other timing service you're using, whether it would have been Race Hero or whatnot. So you can't get year, make, model. You can't get team name. You can't get all these other information data points that we have from Torque Hub. We didn't get a chance to incorporate any sort of API to get that information from Torque Hub. So all that to say, with Torque Hub going away, we're working with Tixer this year for driver and spectator tickets. Tixer is not going to handle driver information. We have built or in the progress of building a new system called the Gridlife Club, which was briefly introduced with a different developer back in 2022 when we were still working with C-Tickets. The idea behind Gridlife Club is it connects with the ticketing platform, and it says, hey, Mark has these 5 tickets to these 5 events. So he can see that I've got these 5 tickets, but I need some information from Mark. I need to know what cars he's driving. I need to know what class he's driving, his transponders, his profile information, his social media, all those things. Competition forms, all that is handled in this Gridlife Club system. Part of that that shift is because I'm sort of taking on a different role now. I think I'm reading it because it's longer than my old role. The lead of digital platforms and experience. So the Gridlife Club is sort of my baby for 2026. And the way it works is you log into it with whatever email you want to log into. And provided it's the same as your Tixer account, all your tickets sync up nice. And you have a virtual garage where you can add all your vehicles, all the information you want, tire sizes, engine displacement, engine make, transponder information. If you've got a fire link, like that's built into there too. All this other stuff is in that virtual garage. Licensing is handled out of there. Our scrutineering is done out of there as well. So competition forms is all done in there. And the competition form stuff I'm also excited about because it's no longer like submit a form over and over. It's I have a library of setups that I can add, modify, delete, change, and I can select which one I want to use. So there's a lot of really cool functionality that already exists in that platform. In this process, building a database of all of our drivers' information. Because we own it, it can now be accessed by our broadcast. So all this car information that we couldn't get before, we can now put into our on-screen graphics. The weight of your vehicle, the tire size of the vehicle, the dyno graph, if that's applicable, like all that stuff we can get now. And with that comes a new timing and scoring connector. So we're going to use the same software, be a custom timing page that also connects to that database. So not only will you be able to watch and see on a Gridlife stylized timing and scoring board that looks a lot like the broadcast, you can click on the name of the driver and get all their social media info, their cars, the car that they're driving, what the information is on that car, and you can get that live and in real time. So that's like the push for next year, and I'm really excited about that piece in particular.
I mean, that's extremely exciting to hear. The concept of being able to go to one place and be able to see all that information of a driver. I really want all the drivers and all the teams out there to really understand the amount of work that takes and commitment level that Kyle is taking on with that project. Because that's exactly the kind of thing that really sets that apart. Like that is a huge undertaking. And man,
there's not another organization that is doing that.
We're trying. And just to add one more thing, that I'm also excited about from the. I lost my train of thought. Dang it, Mark. It'll come back to me. It'll come back to me.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were saying.
But well, I cut Jager off, but I just want to point out, like, you're going to put pro organizations to shame with this, like, right? I know you said Sky Sports, like you want to be Sky, you're going to be looking as good as Sky Sports. Well, it sounds like you're going to be even better than Sky Sports. Like this is something that has not been, I've never seen it been done before, and I think that is just wild. And like your vision is unbelievable, and I'm so excited that you have this opportunity now. As what'd you say? Lead of
digital platforms and experience.
And okay.
Well, and I would be uncomfortable saying that all this stuff is going to happen if I hadn't started on it yet. But the day after we got back from Laguna, when we kind of knew the Torque Hub situation, no one asked me to do this. It was like, I know that this needs to get done, and everyone else is focused on the season, the rules, so I just went with it. And it produced enough of a working concept that we're confident in like putting Kyle in this role to continue developing the digital experience, not only for drivers but for spectators as well. And right now, the platform already does most of those things that I just mentioned. The live timing page, we actually debuted the working concept of at Pit Race. But it was a quick fix to get it up and online because Speed Hive wasn't working. But that'll be redesigned. Functionally, there's a lot that it already does. The thing I forgot about was our results as well. That was a big topic. I think you guys actually touched on the new results thing I made this summer. So that referenced basically like just a file that had all the results ever in them. It's not really a great way to maintain a database of anything. So all of those records have been moved to a database. There's 38,000 records, by the way, for Time Attack going back to 2018, and then most of GLTC and Rush and GLGT. That is also built into this Gridlife Club, so the result system is there now as well. And for your profile, when you log in and you put in Mark Kilgore in your account name, on your homepage, it actually gives you all of your results that you've ever, right now, it does this. All the results you've ever done are right on your homepage now, and you can look by track and by year. So you don't have to go dig through anything to get your own personalized results. You just log in, and they're right there on your homepage. So, and that means that like I can build a graphic that says like, what is Mark Kilgore? How is he placed here the last 5 years? And I can scrape that data and get that.
Well, and I love it. You mentioned too from a spectator standpoint, and again because in my experience that was kind of the lacking. Like it was kind of interesting because walking around Laguna, like I think Kilgore mentioned me, he's like, oh no, I have a link that Gridlife sent me that I can go see. And I was like, cool, but me as a guy who isn't registered for this event, I can't see shit. So I was like, this is where we're laughing. And it's not your guys' fault. It was just a platform-esque because we used to use Race Hero. Race Hero was great. It showed all these things. It was amazing. Race Hero died. Speed Hive is not made for this in any way, shape, or form, and it just
it can't be expected to either, right? Like the cool thing about building our custom timing page is not only can we make it look like Gridlife and we can stylize it, but when we connect it to other things that we're already doing, like point standings and a driver database and a car database, live points was something that debuted on the broadcast. There's no reason why the live timing page couldn't have live championship or live weekend points built into it. That is a calculation code we already have, right? So, doing that, and point standings honestly should probably be in a very similar place. So being able to like switch between tabs and get points and live timing and results from last year or 2 years ago at the same track, all that stuff I think is possible, and it's just a matter of putting in the work to build it out. And again, for the spectators, you made a point that like when you're at an event, when you don't have the live stream and the service is terrible, it can be tricky to like know what's going on. So if you have a place to go that can tell you everything that you need to know, and maybe even at some point it could be an app that sends push notifications. I'm not promising that in the short term, but I'm saying like that's the route that like with this role for me I can focus on is, we got the broadcast. That is my job for the weekend. But outside of that, I'm pushing to make this accessible for fans at the racetrack, people at home, and the drivers, because they also want to know what this information is too.
You do know that what this is going to lead to is guys are going to have their phones on their dash with the leading competitor teed up, and it's going to give them push notifications that they just went faster, and then Kilgore's going to be like, guess we got to go to the next boost level.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like, I'm very aware also that like there are things, and there's definitely gonna be things that break and things that don't work and bugs, and we're gonna be working through that all year. I'm pretty confident so far with what I've built that it's in a pretty good spot, but like it'll probably be a little easier for people to go like, oh, it doesn't work, but like we like Kyle, versus like, oh, it doesn't work and I don't know this company, so like it'd be easier to say like, hey Kyle, like we found this issue, and I can go, okay, great, and we can just tackle it. I think the tininess of our team is actually going to benefit us a lot, because we're not worried about what other organizations need. We're worried about what we need, and we're going to build that.
Yeah. So let me ask this, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer, Kyle, but you and I have talked about it, and it has been my gripe all season, and it's a gripe, but I know that you guys just couldn't deal with it this year based on having to make changes for next year, for Time Attack, for Gridlife. Will we have the timing showing the weekend reference lap for participants, for the drivers, their fastest lap of the weekend throughout the weekend versus how it was this year where it was just showing session data, not weekend data. So will you be able to get back to that?
I haven't done it yet, Mark, but yeah, it's on the list of to-dos.
Okay.
It's a big project. So again, when we were working through, the season of graphics improvements, it was like too big of a project to test in real time. One of the challenges with any motorsport graphics system is you need a good way to test, and it's actually really hard to test when graphics move and change. So the timing computer that has our singular orbits license travels with our truck, so it doesn't come back to the office. The timing computer is at my desk right now at work. So what that means is, once we get past this club launch and I can kind of focus back on the broadcast, I can set up orbits and actually simulate sessions and passings. It makes it a lot easier to test and debug code that is very complicated like that. We had that system with the previous team. They had two very bright minds set that up, and basically that system recorded every lap that was done and saved it to a file that could then be referenced later in the weekend, and it would seed the ticker with those lap times. So we're going to build it in a very similar way. I have a goal to do that. I can't promise it because it doesn't exist yet. But yeah, I agree that it's a major improvement for the time attack viewing. And I think, alongside that, we debuted a little bit of fire lap stuff, which added some great context for GLGT. I don't know where that is yet for next year, but I kind of hope that we keep going down this path of not only lap time data, but additional kind of GPS-based data, mostly because sectors are a goal. But man, when you start doing the math and you have to have more than one timing person, it's a whole other body. You have to run cables and wires across a lot of these racetracks because even though they have loops set up, sometimes they don't maintain it very well. Because like IMSA, NASCAR, they're bringing in all their own stuff every time. Right. So even though there might be a loop cut in the racetrack, it doesn't mean that it works. And we don't know that it works until we're there. So, we'd all love sectors, but I think the GPS stuff is probably an easier route to go down in the short term.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. You mentioned the segment times and GPS because I happened to talk to somebody and they were talking about how they could, build a system that could do that. And I was like, oh, then how come we are not doing this already? Let's get there.
It's hard. It's hard. Like again, Firelapse is great, and working with David and Daniel, like those guys are super, super smart. They do have sector times sort of in that system, but it dumps at the end of the lap. So it doesn't really add the context that I'm hoping for. So we're going to work with them a little bit in the off season. I hope to, pending the partnership, but I really think that adding context to time attack is more important than adding context to racing, because the racing kind of tells its own story. The graphics are really just to help you figure out what order the cars are in, but time attack, it's like the graphics do so much more than just tell the order. There's a whole story behind it, right? So time attack is the harder part of our broadcast, and that's why it's gotten more attention in recent years with the format change, with the graphics, and how much supplemental information, the record stuff, like all that was designed with time attack in mind.
Here at the Perfect Lap Podcast, we're happy to introduce Whoosh Bespoke Wheels as a sponsor of the show. Whoosh Bespoke was born out of necessity. Their race team struggled to find wheels that offered the perfect fit, strength, durability, and that big old thing, a reasonable price. The people behind Whoosh Bespoke are racers and engineers seeking engineering excellence, and they offer precision forged wheels crafted by racers for racers, with a product lineup that includes a wide range of options from monoblock to modular wheels, including 2- and 3-piece wheel designs, all engineered from the finest materials, although they do primarily use 6061 T6 forged aluminum, but they do offer things as high of quality as a magnesium alloy. So this really can work for any setup you're trying to go for. Customization is at the heart of what they do at Whoosh Bespoke. You can tailor your wheels with custom sizes, offsets, finishes, and even options like custom lettering, adding two-tones. Their colors include both standard and premium finishes, as well as special finishes like brushed, hand-polished, and even paint to sample. Every set of wheels produced exceeds the JWL standards and meets the rigorous WCEC quality standards, and they are tested by real people with real cars racing all around the world. And guess what? me and Kilgore, we're also going to be part of that team. So we're going to be putting these things to the test. We're putting them on our cars. Kilgore's going to be repping out and going through all the time attack season. I'm going to be beating them up at HPDE days and just having a good time with them. So I want you to go take a look at them and make sure you give them a follow on all their socials. It's whooshautomotive.com, Whoosh Automotive on all the socials. Go check them out. Well, that's from the questions I had for you was, what is it like announcing for Time Attack? Because it is, with my limited level of experience, I go down that path of, it's freaking hard. And I say that because it's, you're telling stories. You're talking about personnel. You're talking about drivers. You're talking about the car. It's trying to find all this stuff to talk about as people do laps. And as we were just talking about with segment times, it makes it extremely difficult because without those segment times, you're literally having to look over at this car going on the stream, and you're like, is he going full bore?
Yep.
Or is he on a cooldown? And because it's such a, like, I don't want to say humiliating because that's the wrong word, but you're like, okay, we got so and so, and he's going for a low. He's doing a cooldown. Never mind.
Or sometimes it's the opposite, and you're critical, and they break a record.
Yeah.
I did that last year to Eric Fleming, where like his record lap at Road America didn't look that impressive, and then bam, 2:0 whatever he ran, right? So it's hard, yeah. And I'm definitely not the best. And actually, I've heard Dewey talk about this, and I love Dewey to death. And you know, he was he made some comments this year I agreed with. Like, I'm not the best person in the grassroots world to talk about time attack, and it's not because I don't have an interest in it. It's that, you know, I do a lot more than just the announcing for the broadcast, right? There's a lot of prep and run up to it where I'm not necessarily focused on reading driver profiles or as much as I would like to be, or catching up on the latest news. I hear it kind of accidentally a lot of times, and when people send me information, that helps a lot. But the run up to an event is a lot more about like getting the broadcast to happen and a lot less about like the content of the broadcast. So, you know, things like the graphics thing, that they help me. They're a crutch that I can lean on to kind of get through the stories. Time attack is hard to cover when you don't know when cars are going to go fast. So that was sort of the impetus to change to the podium sprint format, which I had a hand in writing. I kind of wrote the brief for it and passed it on to Adam and Abe to tweak on, which is how we kind of ended up where we did. But it's pretty close to my original concept, which was, you know, time attack is great when you know the cars are going to go fast or are going to try, right? And you know that the morning sessions, everyone's going to try, right? But you don't necessarily know what lap they're going to do it on. You don't know when they're going to roll out of the pit. So it's really hard to plan. And if Friday morning has nice, cool weather and the rest of the weekend is terrible, like you might have missed the record lap on Friday and then the rest of the weekend doesn't matter. So from a driver's perspective, I totally understand like wanting every session to count and having those golden moments on a Friday afternoon or Saturday morning. But the podium sprint allows us to build a show and say, hey, everyone tune in at 3:00, because when you tune in, you're going to see everybody that's super fast trying to go even faster. And there's stakes and there's mistakes and there's problems and there's people that are underdogs that like snipe a victory that wasn't expected before. And it creates drama, and it's still time attack. We're just telling you to attack it right now. So there's
sure.
a little bit of compromise in the format, but I think in general, there still seems to be positive reception. The qualifying formats have shifted a little bit. I have my thoughts and opinions on that, but there's always a better way to do it. But at some point, like, you're paying for track time, so you need to get that too. So it's always a balance of like, customer needs to get what they want, and you need to be able to put on a show. So that's how we ended up with what we have.
Yeah, I mean, I like the concept of what you said, though. Time attack when we tell you to. And
right, right, because like time attack's great, but like if a tree falls in a forest, like that record's awesome, but if no one saw it, like it sucks the life out of it, right? So even though podium sprint, you might not see records, like you're going to see people trying really hard anyway, right? And so the record times still matter, and I still think we could probably incentivize those a little more. But the podium sprint, I think, has been one of our universal wins the last couple of seasons. I feel.
Yeah, well, I think it is amazing for time attack. I think podium sprint is absolutely something that needs to stay around and needs to be utilized. If anything, I would say captivate it more. Make sure that, you know, and pros and cons, like you said, you end up in a situation where it has to be at the right time, but at the same time, you have to get people their track time because they need to feel like what they paid for is what they get. But at the same time, like put Podium Sprint in a place where from a atmospherics that it is at the right time where there could be those records available to them. And I think that would be a cool feature too, but it makes it difficult. I mean, all I can say is all those drifters and all those road racers, they can road race anytime they want. They can drift all in the afternoon when it's 110 degrees. Time attackers, we need that 63.
Yeah,
63 degrees.
Yeah, those morning sessions, right?
Prima donnas.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's. I think you guys have talked at length about how Podium Sprint would be better in the morning, and I think from a lot of perspectives, I agree with that. I think
it's just hard.
It is hard, and the other thing is, we've got 6 to 7 heats, which again we used to kind of do the 3 qualifyings, which I myself preferred that format. There was a whole bunch of feedback and changes that made it not that way last year. I honestly don't know where we're going to end up for next year. I think there's still a discussion about it. But, having that last heat that in the morning, I think that this past year, Sunday morning, like there was a last heat. And so it's like, do you give that to the Podium Sprint guys or do you give that to people to give one more chance to qualify in? So, Podium Sprint, like the track is sort of neutralized and it's the same for everybody. So it matters a little less when it is. Versus like the heats, you really want to get that prime track opportunity. So I think that's sort of why they had it like that. But again, I think with enough feedback from enough people, tides will shift. And honestly, from what I've heard about Sundays this year, I could see that being a possibility. I don't know what the day schedules look like. I know that we'll probably know them by PRI.
That's fair. But to Jager's point, and I think you run the risk of, as you said, Kyle, you run the risk of missing records if you were to run Podium Sprint in a morning session, especially on Sunday. It's a little difficult when you're running 3-day events Sunday morning. By the time Sunday morning comes around, someone may or may not still be running, depending on if their car has lasted the weekend, right? But regardless, you're almost at least guaranteed to catch records on Sunday morning, along with the winner, right? Along with who ends up on the podium. And so it just gives you that opportunity because there's just one thing that just really sticks out in my mind. I think it was maybe 2 years ago. I was watching World Time Attack Challenge and the RP 968 comes across. I think they did like a 117 or 116, something like that. Right. And I just like the 2 announcers like were going crazy, like, oh, like it's a 117. He's
Bailey Woods, Laguna, anybody?
Yes, yes. And like, I mean, just like excitement, right? And it was a record. And so I just feel like that oftentimes what happened, and there have been times, and this is just the way it goes, but there have been times where when it's just another session, and you've got multiple classes out on track, it's hard enough to keep up with 30 cars. Now you're trying to keep up with 4 classes, especially when you start getting to the A group or the B group, you start getting the fast cars in those classes that are likely to break records. And so you're following the street mod guy when the street car breaks a record, and you may not even notice it for 30 seconds or even more.
Right. Yeah.
And you're like, oh, by the way, Josh Halka just broke the record. Not sure when he did that, but I've just noticed it, right?
Yeah.
Like, look, I mean, at the same time, I've also heard Adam Jabay talk about, look, you're also putting the stream on for the spectators. And he says, I mean, there is a noticeable bump in viewership when Podium Sprint begins in Sunday afternoon, right? And I'm not sure that I can see where it's more difficult to get that same bump on a Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time, and now it's 5 a.m., right? Pacific time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we've tried a Podium Sprint that early, and I don't really know. I don't follow necessarily. I know that the mornings are slow from a viewership perspective, but Prime, our broadcast team, they've pushed me to kind of start the broadcast earlier, just with a thumbnail, just so people get the notification. They have time to kind of trickle in. I will tell you that the Podium Sprint at Road America this year was the highest concurrent viewership we've ever seen on a Gridlife broadcast. About 1,150 people were watching live in that moment, which was a huge win, because in the past we had seen, pre-podium sprint, we had seen the viewership really peak, right at the start of a GLTC race. Our average viewer statistic, which will, the driver deck will be out for PRI, so everyone will get access to this, but the average viewer on a Gridlife live stream stays for 19 minutes, which is a long time, really long time compared to most other metrics as far as YouTube or any kind of live stream is concerned. So that 20-minute GLTC race is like perfect for our audience. So podium sprint runs longer than that too. So you have to kind of create these little arcs and these little peaks and valleys. And I think, the way the format works now works really well. I think I was a little concerned with putting all the cars on track together in a class, because it takes away the individual 2-lap dash that I really liked about the original podium sprint. But now you get a little back and forth, which is fun. And I think that actually contributed to some of the viewership that we see peak at Road America, is because now when you tune in, it's like, man, it's like you don't just watch a guy do their run and see where they land. It's like they'll land there and then they'll get bumped and then they try to climb up the order more. So it's like this back and forth, which I think is really cool. But yeah, we could certainly try it in the morning. I do think there is something to be said about like the viewership just slowly climbs up until around 11 noon, and then it kind of peters out after 3 or 4 o'clock.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Makes sense. And again, I can't say it enough. One thing I love about Gridlife is they're willing to take chances, to try things, see where things land. And that's one of the big factors of Gridlife that I always love, is that you guys take ideas, take comments, take all this, information in, you guys bring it to the team, you guys absorb it, think about it, twist it, make it so that it makes some sort of sense, and then throw it out there. And it's kind of like, I don't want to say like you're just throwing things at the wall to see what sticks, but
sometimes,
yeah.
I remember Super Grid from 2022. Like that was the thing that we threw at the wall and didn't stick, and that's okay, right? Like,
and that's what I love.
Yeah,
I love that you're willing to do that, and if it doesn't stick, you go, that didn't work. Let's try something else.
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember if it was one of my teachers in high school always said, fail boldly, right? Like just give it a go, give it your all. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But, you try to take calculated risks where necessary, right? There are some things that are not worth risking. There's schedule changes that are, or keeping the schedule the same, that is too risky, right? Could we get more spectators to make Summer Apex work at Road America? Maybe, but like that's a big risk if you look at the underlying details, right? So, rule books are going to get longer every year by nature. So like GLTC is going through this thing right now where, we're trying to iterate, but at this point, iterating might not be enough. So you have to take a really big swing, and that could be a risk too. So, you have to be careful, because, when you've built a thing that's successful, you're never going to know which change is going to propel you to the next level or which change is going to bring it crashing to the ground. And so every risk has to be calculated, which is why I think Michael's done a really good job of kind of figuring out which ones, work and which ones don't before we lose a whole bunch of money on them. Because, like the live stream, like doing everything is a risk because we don't really see a return on that. But what it did for viewership metrics and building a brand, like there's a lot of partner interest in the broadcast, which we might not have gotten if we didn't do all these things, right? So that'll hopefully pay off someday. And I think that, knowing when to take those risks and when not to is part of what makes a good leader. Even if people don't necessarily see it with the changes that they want to see, there are other things happening behind the scenes I think are going to make Gridlife better.
So I'm going to turn it in a completely different direction really quick.
Let's do it.
So, what are some of the best moments that you've had on the live stream, and what are some of the off the top of your head, what are some of like the best people that you've brought in to like liven up the live stream from a guest appearance perspective?
Oh man, there's plenty of people that I brought on in a guest capacity, but best moments, to start there, I think, just even in recent seasons, like looking back at Bailey Woods at Laguna Seca, right? Like that was such an awesome moment to like steal back in the last moments of podium sprint by 6,000ths of a second. Like that was a demonstration of like the competition, the broadcast, everything lined up perfectly for that. That is a moment I'll remember for a long time. Going back in GLTC, there's races I remember for different reasons, like Tom O'Gorman just destroying everyone at Lime Rock, I think a year or two ago, just light 17-second lead, like lights out. moments like that are significant. There's Erica Till's win after the rollover crash in 2023 when he came back to Midwest Festival. I was in tears in that tent outside the trailer. And if you go watch that race 4 Midwest of 23, you'll like hear me choking it back because it's like this dude was in a ditch upside down 2 months ago.
Remember that picture.
And he won a race with the same car with dents on the roof. Like, how cool is that? Like that, you will never see that in an IMSA race, right? So like those are the special moments to me. As far as characters I've had on, just recently, like at Pit Race, we all love Dewey, right? Dewey rolls in. I had Bucky Lassick sit down with me, and Dewey rolls in because he had been talking to Tommy Score. He goes, "Kyle, I'm going to talk to Bucky. He's a Subaru guy," and he took the headset right off my head, and he sat down. That was a really fun moment. I had. I can't remember her name, unfortunately, but the Aston Martin reserve driver did a race with me last year. I can't really do what's her name. I feel bad for forgetting it. But
it'll come to us.
I can't remember. But she was fantastic. She jumped right in and gave us her knowledge, which was really, really cool. Trying to think of other guests I've had, and of course I've gotten the chance to announce with Greg Creamer, which he was an SRO Connect. Because he was the lead announcer at SRO the first year that I was there. And then he ended up leaving SRO in 2021. And I got an opportunity at SRO to call the Nashville GT America race in its first year on the CBS broadcast, which was a huge moment for me. I actually have, for those that are watching on YouTube, I still have the poster from that event over here.
Nice.
That was a big moment, my first televised broadcast at 26 years old or something. But I called Greg because I knew he'd be around, and he actually ended up announcing Mid-Ohio while I was gone. And so to announce with a guy that I grew up listening to is a gift every time. I just got off an esports race with him 2 hours ago, announcing with him in iRacing. Like he and I hang out all the time. He had a pretty major surgery this year, so he wasn't able to join us on the road, but we hope to have him back at some point. But it's a real pleasure to learn from guys like that. And I think in the pre-show, you mentioned Calvin Fish, another voice I grew up with. I got to do a couple rounds with him, and I also got to do the Indianapolis 8-hour last year alongside Calvin and Ryan Marine, another guy I have so much respect for. And if you guys ask, like, how do you prepare to sit alongside those two guys? The answer is you don't try too hard. So, you go into a booth like that. No one knows who Kyle Heyer is. Nobody cares, right? It's not about me. But I remember the guy that was in that role, the role that I did at the Indy 8-hour the year before was Bob Varsha. Just to give you an idea of like what I was walking into, right? So
the voice of F1
yes.
for many people. And what they grew up listening to.
Yeah, so I walked into that going, I'm not going to ever know. Calvin Fish raced against Ayrton Senna and beat him. So I'm not going to know more about race cars or racing than Calvin Fish. Ryan Marine has a 650-page notebook on every driver that has ever graced the paddock in SRO. I'm not going to out-research him. So I didn't even try. I went and sat down between those two guys, and I know how to talk and facilitate conversation. So I just sat down and I would bring something up and get Calvin to prompt Ryan about it or vice versa. And that worked really, really well. And I was super proud of that. And just to work alongside those guys, I take that knowledge back to Gridlife because they are unbelievable professionals in every sense of the word. And I'm super lucky to have had that chance.
Well, and I think you just kicked on like one of the biggest points there, right? Like you don't need to be the most race car of race car guys. You don't need to have the most level of intel out of everybody there. It's about keeping, like, I can't stress this enough, to have a legitimate conversation for 12 hours or 8 hours, depending on, whatever the broadcast is, for hours upon hours. And for you guys to bounce back and forth between GLGT, GLTC,
Yep.
then go to the time attack, then go to Rush, and to have any bit of information about all of those things and commentate and to do that and keep energy up. I literally can say this because I've had a slight opportunity to do something similar. It is incredibly more difficult than anyone can ever imagine. It is so difficult. So the amount of respect that I have for you and for that profession as a whole is just incredible. Like it is so difficult. it's just, you get to the point where you're just like, I just want to sit here and not talk to anybody.
So, I don't think we touched on this yet, but one of the other cool opportunities I got through SRO, the guy that runs that broadcast company, it's Apex Broadcast, Clark Camburn, he picked up a contract to do the Pikes Peak International Hill Climb a couple of years ago.
Oh, yeah.
So, when they were looking for an announcer, he reached out to me. Like, this is like 2 weeks before Midwest Festival in 2023. And I was blown away that I would get this opportunity. This was crazy to me. I asked him, why on earth would you call me? And he goes, well, because you're too afraid, so you're not going to screw it up. So, which was a great thing to say, because he's like, we could hire, pretty much anybody we wanted, but like, they're jaded. They have opinions, and this isn't about their opinion. This is about covering this event. And we want someone that has a little bit of, humility to come in here and just be a little bit afraid and not know anything and learn this event in real time. So the Pikes Peak Hill Climb is the hardest broadcast I've ever done and ever will do. I've done it 3 years in a row, and there is no more challenging experience. Not only are you you're at 9,000 feet, so the air is a little thin. It's a little cold. It's a 9-hour day, which Gridlife streams are 9 hours, no big deal. The competitors are very grassroots. Some of them at least, that don't necessarily maintain social media accounts, things like that. The Pikes Peak Hill Climb group does a fantastic job of assembling some information. But if I wanted to go ask a question, I don't go there in the weeks prior, because they only bring me on for the race weekend. So I don't get to see the practices or the qualifyings or anything like that. The competitors load into the paddock at 3 p.m. before race day. We go up to get acclimated and check out the broadcast and do a fax check to check all the microphones and cameras on Saturday morning. And then we leave at about 4 p.m. to go to the hotel to get some sleep, because we get up at 10 p.m. to go back to the mountain, because if you're not on the mountain ready to rip by midnight, you don't get on the mountain, because there's thousands of people that will clog the road up in the morning and you will not get there. So the call time is 10:30 p.m. for the night before, and you sleep in the rental car on the side of the mountain. So that leaves you an hour and a half overlap where you can ask questions to the paddock that is loading in, right? So you know very little about these people. This past year, a third of the field was rookies. There's 70-ish people, right? So they don't have any history. You don't really know what's going on in their car. And these broadcasts are viewed by 250,000 people that are very passionate. And so I get roasted endlessly on those. And the other thing is, like, the challenges of that broadcast, right? It's the length of the Nordschleife up a mountain. It's 12.5 miles, 156 turns. You can't run a cable up that mountain because they will run it over. There's no other place. There's no alternate route. This is the road, right? So everything's wireless.
According to the people in the chat, you very easily can.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's trust me when I say this. I am blown away that the coverage even is as good as it is. They have basically like a cherry picker truck with like antenna receptors that like sit at the start line, and they pick up. They have to be line of sight to the camera guys, so they have to be in a place where they can get line of sight. They can only see a couple corners at a time. And then you have to like fly those people in. You have to feed them. You have to get them rental cars, hotels. All of a sudden, this broadcast that has 5 cameras is now, you're deep in 6 digits. And if you wanted to have a camera every 4 corners, this would be a $15 million broadcast. Like, it just doesn't make sense. So, that is the hardest thing I've ever done. And
don't forget the helicopter, which they actually did bring back last year.
Yeah. So the helicopter. That was a thing too, right? Because, I didn't even get to the point I was going to bring up about Pikes Peak, but the helicopter the first year, it's expensive. It has to refuel every 25 minutes because at altitude, the fuel economy of a helicopter is very poor. No one ever thinks about that, right?
Nope.
Also, same thing with drones. Like, the battery life, they don't fly very well. You're at 10,000, 15,000 feet in the air. Like, you're already halfway to airplane cruising altitude, right? So the helicopter turned on the power to Clark's camera system, and this is 2024, and it blew out the electronics. It overamped them and blew out the electronics on the morning of the race. So last year, they debuted a different system, something that they kind of learned from SRO, from their onboard application, and they took that in the helicopter, and that was far better this year. This year, though, the wind was too high at the top of the mountain, so they had to shorten the race. But it took them 3.5 hours to make that decision because they really, really want to make it a full course run, right? Broadcast started before they knew that they were going to have to delay it. 3.5 hours of sitting on that start line with nothing to talk about, with competitors I haven't met yet. This is the worst case scenario for any announcer.
Yes.
And everyone was like, why there's all this pre-race? It's like, we didn't plan on, we planned on 15 minutes of pre-race. This was not planned. And for 3.5 hours, you just have to keep talking. It doesn't matter about what. We were talking about physics at one point. Like it went so far off the rails, but you just can't freeze up and stop because no one's going to save you.
Yeah. That's absolutely true. No one's coming to your rescue.
Nope.
You are there and you have to figure it out. And like you said, you just got to talk about anything. I mean, that's when you see somebody walking by in like anything and you're just like, please God, come talk
anything,
to me.
please. I mean, and the other thing is like, and the Pikes Peak Hill Climb folks, they do such a fantastic job of they really pat the backs of the partners and people that make it happen because this race is so challenging to put on. But they bring in a lot of people from the Colorado Park Service, and they have a lot of other supporting sponsors. And they'll go around and they'll grab them up for an interview on the stage, and they'll hand me a Post-it note with a name on it. And you have to generate those questions in real time. So I don't know anything about this. So you have to not only learn how to say their name properly.
I was going to say, they better give you some phonetic spelling.
Yeah. I usually just have them introduce themselves, which works a lot of the time. But, then you have to generate questions for 5 to 10 minutes. And sometimes that can be challenging in its own right. So huge challenge. It's probably the thing that's pushed me the hardest. And that is the one stream I will not read the comments on because it is just really rough. And it's okay. I get it. As a spectator, if I didn't understand what was going on behind the scenes, I would be frustrated too. But they just take it out on, they can't show the whole run because there's not enough cameras. So they'll cut back to me in between. And I think they think that the producer is just doing that because they think I'm important. There's just nothing else to show.
You're looking at trees.
Yeah, they're like, well, who's this dumb talking head? We don't want to see that guy, So yeah, it's tough, but you have to have a thick skin in some regard to do this,
So jumping off of going to Pikes Peak, I want to know, what are your favorite tracks? What are your favorite 3 race tracks to go to and I want to put this into 2 different arenas. I want to know, what are your favorite tracks in terms of I want to say amenities, but announcer amenities and how awesome it is to be an announcer at that track. And then the 3 tracks and then your favorite tracks of the tracks that you just think are just badass and would love to drive.
Yeah. The best racetrack to announce at easily is Indianapolis. That racetrack, the public address booth is in the second floor of the pagoda. And you've got basically a monitor display at an angle in front of you. And there's 10 of them, and each announcer can individually tune what cameras they want to watch or the timing and scoring screen. You've got really nice headsets. You've got the announcer console boxes and things that are already set up in there for you. IMS Productions is unbelievable. That place is, I don't know how much it costs to rent, but if it's not $10 billion, I don't know how they do it. That place rocks. Racetrack's so-so. People are going to hate me for this, but racetrack's so-so. The Indy 500 is cool. The 8 hours cool, but the racetrack it's a road course. Yeah. But my favorite tracks, special to me, is Watkins Glen because it's my home track, and I think it's just such a spectacular, super fast, super highway of speed. Lime Rock has to go on that list. It just feels so intimate, and the Circuit Legends event feels sort of like an American Goodwood in a way to me, and I kind of wish that we would play more into that. The concourses are great. It's a fantastic spectator racetrack. The staff there is unbelievable. Some of the greatest people I've ever worked with. So Lime Rock is absolutely on that list. And then Road America, not necessarily for the racing. I don't think it races all that well or time attacks very well with us, but I think as a spectator and the food, and it's the Road America experience. Everyone that has been there will tell you the same thing. But Road America, Lime Rock, Watkins Glen, top 3. Road Atlanta, close 4th.
Yeah. I meant to say this earlier, or you at least made me think of it earlier, talking about Lime Rock isn't a festival, doesn't have the music, but you really kind of center it around car culture. And I was going to say, I think that even last year, but especially more this year, and I say this year, this upcoming year for 2026, I think that, Lime Rock, in terms of if you could pick one event for the motorsports itself, Lime Rock, hands down, no challenge from anybody else. It is such a spectacular event from a motorsports perspective. Even just the car show. We get a lot of car shows that show up for some of the other events, but the one that I went walking around for Lime Rock, And I mean, I was just blown away. I mean, such cool cars, all sorts. And I love how Gridlife sort of does their 80s, 90s. They highlight a certain, mark, Hondas, Nissans, JDM, Bavarian, whatever. So that's also cool to kind of see that. And so if anybody's out there listening, and you're thinking about going to an event, you should definitely, I would put Watkins Glen and or Lime Rock as probably two of the top events to go to. Road Atlanta is a lot of fun with FD. That's just something that's very unique. Laguna is also a lot of fun just from being out there on the West Coast. It's also a really cool kind of historic track as well. But Lime Rock, from the motorsports perspective, is just unbelievable. It's just fantastic.
Lime Rock's my favorite event on the Gridlife calendar. It's my favorite event ever. Like from a motorsports perspective, it's the best event I've ever been to. Laguna, you actually made a point, Mark, that Laguna Seca felt like a more natural conclusion to the season than perhaps Pit Race did. And I actually sort of agreed with you. I was not a huge fan initially, I'll be honest. And even internally, I was saying that, like, Laguna Seca is a great racetrack. I just wish it was somewhere else on the calendar because it's so hard to get people out there from our championships in the Midwest. But this year in particular, there was something that felt, maybe it was just because we had a great broadcast that weekend and I'm so involved with that, but this year it like really felt impactful and huge and like proper. It just felt like a great way to end the season. So I'm really excited to go back there next year, kind of having that experience from 2025.
Yeah. I hope that you guys lean into, especially this year, Laguna as a bit more of a finale type event to send off the year. Surely there's going to be championships that are to be decided, especially with so much fewer events. I think a lot more people are going to be traveling out there this year. I think it's going to be a big event. I think it's probably going to be the biggest, best one that's been out there so far, and that's great. I'm a little disappointed that I'm not going to be driving as much this year. I think it's going to be such a fun year, but that's just how it goes.
Yeah, I think sorry. I think the tow out there, I don't think anybody in the Gridlife office or, Michael or Chris or Adam would ever expect anyone or say, like, you have to go do this event. We would never make it mandatory. We don't want to burn people's budgets dry. But it's just the date that we have. It works for a variety of reasons. It's in the partner's backyard. It does really well from a driver's registration perspective. It's building. The stream's great out there. And, there's a lot of benefits to it. I think now that there's less stuff going on, people will find it a little easier to justify that tow. And I do think people should try it, but I don't think I want to suggest people do it every single year and burn themselves out. That's a long tow. It's a lot of driving. It's a lot of diesel, tire blowouts. Like it's a grueling journey, but I think it's a bucket list everyone should try to hit.
Well, and I'm just going to say, my buddy James Ho, we've talked about it I went up and I hung out with you guys at Laguna Seca, hung out with Kilgore there. I thought the event was absolutely amazing. It was great to just be at the event and be within it. And I just thought that was really cool. One thing, I kind of laughed because as a guy that was trying to just care about the time attack, I said to myself, man, I kind of wish the parking, they would be like, if you're in time attack, you're here. And if you're with the rush, you're here. But I will say that's also such an organizational headache that I would never put that on you guys. That is like the most terrible thing on the planet. But from my perspective, just walking around, how awesome would have been if like it would have been more identified of like, this is for this.
So, that's actually an interesting point. So you brought up earlier, like how are SRO and Gridlife different, right? Like SRO does this for the most part. There are some teams that have multiple cars under one tent, but they've got these big inflatable things that are like GT4 is here and GT3 is here. And as a fan, that makes it really easy to go like, I want to go check out the GT3 cars and see them all in a line, right? We've talked about this actually, and we've decided not really to do anything about the way that the paddock is, not how it's organized. Organization's different, but we've decided to leave things mixed up because Gridlife as a culture is about mixing the cultures together. And so there is sort of this unwritten thing about how if you're paddock next to a drift guy, you're probably going to have different conversations that open your eyes a little bit more about the motorsport world than you would if you were just like surrounded by your buddies all the time. So yeah, there's certainly advantages as a spectator, like have everything together, but it's also kind of cool to like see a GLGT car and a GLTC car and a drift car and a time attack car like all in the same place, where you can just kind of compare, contrast, all the drivers are interacting. I think it makes the community feel smaller and less clicky, perhaps. I don't know that it would do that. I just know like in the SRO world's different, IMSA world's different, but that's probably why we haven't really shifted to that model, even if it would simplify the experience of walking around a little bit, even for me, knowing where people are.
I mean, it's just I can't even imagine the organizational nightmare of like, I just remember back to this event where just trying to tell people where to park, like they got garages.
Yeah.
And people couldn't figure out what number their garage was. And like, then you're going to try to put them on a map. And
yeah.
like,
so there's things like, the camping for spectators is done. I think Tixer also uses this integration, but it's done with Seats.io, which basically allows you to make a map and say like, I bought this spot or I choose this spot. And we've actually thought about doing paddock maps like that. The challenge with paddocks a lot of the time is that they're too small to like have a spot like saved for someone between two people. So a lot of the times it's filled in by just who shows up first, because if you leave this gap, like it's really hard to get a stacker or even a single car trailer in some of these places. Gingerman is a great example like that. James Houghton has parked people. He's the best parking team in existence. And he'll tell you like, you have to be really, really on point. And so the organization is like where people go, we could figure out, but then you'd have to like line them up at the gate and bring them in that order. And that's where things would get out of hand.
Yeah. Messy,
That's
terrible.
fair. That's fair. So we'll start to wrap up this episode, but one of the things that we had talked about, and Kyle, you went into a whole spiel about all the changes that you guys are doing, all the new iterations, the new graphics, all of this new information you're going to be able to collect. With all of that being said, give me one or two ways that, and part of the reason I asked this is I remember Tom O'Gorman talking about some things that he did when he was in the SRO or IMSA paddock. It was the SRO paddock, TC America.
Yeah, it would have been PWC at that time.
Yeah. So he talked about a couple things that he did. Right, to try and help the announcers know who he is, know what's going on, and so that if he popped up on the broadcast, that the announcers would know who he is. They would know some things about him. So, what are one or two things that you think are most helpful for you from a driver's perspective to help you guys out in the broadcast?
Yeah, I think of those two things, one of them is really simple, I think. And it might, I don't want to sound critical, but like if we give you a form to do, or like there's this Gridlife club thing, the first thing is just,
we gave you a form,
just fill it out. Like, so, and again, with the way that Tour Hub was, it didn't always make it super easy to look at. The Gridlife club thing, we've run all the GLGT drivers through it. Mark, I think you've poked around in there. A lot of that is way easier to maintain, to update. That just doing that in a timely manner, like in weeks before the event rather than like at the event or in the line at registration, like that. I'm going to pull an entry list. Like I don't have time once I get to the event to like go through everything. Like if there's any prep, it's beforehand. So the earlier you get your ticket, like last minute ticket purchases really hurt, especially if I don't know who you are. And then fill out your stuff early and often, and update that stuff too. And the Gridlife Club, I hope, will be a more fun place and a more visually interesting place to actually update and maintain your information about your car. And then the second thing, which is probably the more important one, once you've done all those things already, is send me an email or send me a message. You can find me on Facebook Messenger, or you can email me, Kyle@grid.life, and just send me a message with your name, where you're from, and bullet point what you've done to your car and your past experience. Those things alone, I can immediately look through and highlight, like, oh, hey, this person is a NASA champion 3 times over and said so-and-so class. Or, hey, this person doesn't have any experience, but they built this car, this really wacky car with a V12 from a whatever in it, right? If it's sent in like huge paragraphs, like it's really hard for me to digest that. But if you bullet point it into where you're from, what your car is, the modifications that are interesting to it, and then your past experience. Just that information is like enough for me to see it and actually take it in. And then from there, maintaining social media to some degree, like if you follow me, I will generally follow you, and then I just naturally will gravitate and pick up things, even if I'm not trying. Like Eric Catil is a guy I've been around since 2019. I watch all of Eric Catil's YouTube videos. I listen to all your podcasts. Like being involved in media of some form, I'm going to, as a fan of motorsport and as a fan of Gridlife, I'm going to consume all of it. Mike Burrows from Stanceworks, like I know a lot more about that car than I know about most Time Attack cars because of the detail he goes in on it. So bringing attention to YouTube channels, like, hey, I vlog my builds or whatever. That's fantastic for me because I will then subscribe, I will follow it, and I'll go along and watch it. And it's not, I don't necessarily go through like a research phase of a broadcast. Like I'm not going to necessarily sit down on a Thursday before a show and like go through everything. It's just, I don't really maintain a notebook. It's not how I work. I like to be like friends with the people that I talk about. So when we get to the racetrack, introducing yourself, that making yourself a face that I like recognize is really handy because the more that I'm friends with you, just naturally, I'm just gonna pick up the things. You don't have to even like me. If you don't like me, that's fine. Just like make sure that I know who you are because when I can put a face to a name and I can follow you on Instagram and I see your YouTube and you sent me an email, like I'm not gonna forget about you. And in the weekend, if you break something, we don't have eyes everywhere. We won't be able to read your mind. Send me an update. Hey, I broke this. Some drivers are really good about this. I will talk about you if you're 25th, if you're on screen and I know something about you. If you're 25th and you're in the background and I don't know anything about you, I'm not going to go out of my way to make something up, right? So I can't talk about information I don't know. And it's very difficult because in SRO, there's 70 or 80 drivers a year that I have to know. There are 2,500 Gridlife competitors every year that I just can't. I can't know them all. So just the email, do your forms, and you're already better off than doing none of those things.
And you hit on something that I really want to key in on is this is something that all of these Time Attack drivers need to do a better job on is getting involved in social media as a whole. Like literally, like you said, you're just consuming social media like everybody else.
Yeah.
So as you guys build up to the event 2 weeks out, you guys are naturally going through, you're prepping the car, you're getting this thing done, you're putting new parts on, or you're tuning, or you're, doing a alignment or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
Utilize social media. As Kyle said, be active. And I can't stress it enough. Let's put out more YouTube content.
Yeah.
Like there is not enough Time Attack YouTube content. And me and Alan have actually talked a lot about this. He posted a thing the other day asking like, what kind of content do you guys want to watch? And my response to Alan was, Alan, post the content that you want us to see, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we all know fast lap content, we all love to see a good fast lap, but at the same time, we know fast lap content sucks.
Yeah.
It's like, what I really want to see is I want to see you prepping the car. I want to see why you're doing this. I want to see the modifications you're doing to the car. I want to see the power you make. I want to see the suspension that you tweaked. I want to see all of those little details. And that's the content that Kyle's going to tune in on. He's going to watch, he's going to remember, and he's going to be able to call out when you're on live stream.
Yeah. Two great examples of this. Mario Moroni going into Laguna Seca didn't message me, but he did post on his Instagram that he had to replace, I think it was either a control arm or a hub on his Civic because of the G loads that car has experienced, just over time. And so that was something that I just saw in passing. And when we came to Laguna, I talked about it on the broadcast, like, yeah, he went through this car. He was driving a long way to be out here. So, he went through the effort of checking all of his hubs, replacing parts that had worn out because look, it gives me an opportunity to talk about a sponsor like Falcon, for example. Like these RT660s generate so much corner load that it's breaking his Civic, right? Another great example is the Veloster in Gridlife GT, the KDM tuners guys. They replaced I can't remember off the top of my head. They replaced a component of their suspension with a part from a Tractor Supply because they couldn't find the correct part.
I remember that one. Yeah, I remember that.
And I don't think I heard about that one during the weekend, but once I heard that little factoid, that you bet I talked about that. Yeah. So again, I want to know what you break and why. Like, yes. I don't even know. I don't. When you're doing good, I can see you on the scoring. I want to know when you're doing badly too. Yeah. That's what helps me.
There were two other examples that I thought of, which was Kyle, you and I were at Lime Rock. I joined you for GLGT. Yeah. And we were talking multiple times about Chris DeLucia, who had wrecked his car. Mm-hmm. He bought another E36. He grafted an entire rear end onto his race car and showed up that next, it was,
and you would never know because it looked the same as it did in Midwest, right? So had he not made, posted about it, I would have never known those things, right? So it's, I think it's just a matter of, I don't only want to hear when things are good. Lap records are great. I'll watch the lap record video, but like the story comes from all the trials and tribulations. That's the stuff that I really need to see and hear about.
Yeah. The other guy I was thinking about was he's got a BMW M4. He wrecked it at Lime Rock.
That guy
was able. Yeah, he was able to get it back together. Showed up at Laguna.
Right.
Got first place.
Right. Yeah. And that's an example of a story that like kind of writes itself because you were up in the conversation at Lime Rock, and so that's when I don't necessarily have a lot to go off of. When another way to get on air is to crash. Don't do that, but it is a way to get talked about, and then that I have that story to talk about, right? So
I told Jager this. I've never had so many people around my car than when I crashed it. Jackie Ding, he had an entire army around his car at Laguna, right? Like, I mean, it was just a mob. Yeah. Unfortunately, crashed cars attract a lot of people.
Yeah, we don't. But, and as far as the broadcast goes, like I hate watching NASCAR is fun because they have whole teams dedicated to people fixing those things. Right? It sucks to watch people crash. Our stance on incidents, as far as they are shown on the broadcast, is like we never like to accept that they happen, but we acknowledge that they do. So there are instances where there are series that will immediately pull the camera if there's an incident about to happen, right? Or they don't want to show a replay of an accident. I've always pushed to shed light on like, hey, this is a situation that happened. Like, this stinks. This is not the expectation of the series or the sport, but like it happens, and this is a real part of it. And I think it makes everyone better to not shy away from that. And also, like I always think it's a little selfish to not ever update on a situation that happens because there are people that use the broadcast as a means of information. An extreme example would be like the Robin Shoot accident at Laguna Seca. That was a really, really scary thing. And so, we didn't want to talk about it until we knew more, and we just didn't know more until the broadcast was over for the weekend. But, we never want to show anything where anyone gets hurt, but we'll never show a replay where that's the case. But had we gotten that on air and we knew that he was okay after, we would have shown that replay because it's a spectacular moment. Spectacular doesn't always mean good, so it's just part of the motorsport story.
Yeah. And I said this when I brushed the wall at Lime Rock. When we were talking about it from that episode, and I told the story, I was in the car and I run an app on my phone, MHD, and that logs all the parameters from, that's what I basically use as a data logger. But so I had it in my car. I brushed the wall, right? Suspension was broken, couldn't move the car, was sitting there. And so while I'm sitting there, kind of waiting, I pull my phone up. I can't remember if I texted or called my wife.
Oh, I've heard this before.
And said, I'm sorry, I wrecked the car. And I'm so sorry. And she's like, yeah, I know, I'm watching I'm watching the live stream. I see your car currently sitting as it is. Like, oh, okay, all right, well, she's like, are you all right? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And so to your point, it happens. And
it's never good. Like I'm never I think people probably underestimate how personally I take my relationships with competitors, right? When we see incidents on track in GLTC, and we had a good year last year, but when there's incidents, it scares me. I don't like it. It's one of the things where in the SRO world, right? It is you have no emotion, right? You are telling people the story. You're relaying the information, and I don't necessarily have personal relationships with those drivers, right? Gridlife, I certainly do. So it hurts me when I see other drivers get into wrecks. It's not fun, but you still have to be able to like go into the mode of take your personal feelings out of it, your anxieties, and sometimes the shock factor. I think 2021 Road America GLTC finale with Catil and Alessandrini and a couple others, that was a bad day for me too. Like, it stinks, but all these great moments of victory and celebration, and that's what we all are living for. But I'm in it with everybody else, right? Like, I'm not in a position to race my own car, but I feel like I'm in the competitor mindset when situations like that happen more than I am from an organizational perspective.
Well, Kyle, all I have to say is it has been phenomenal sitting here and chatting with you. You gave us from experience to future to things to look forward to in 2026. And let me say, 2026 is right around the corner. Other than that, Kilgore, you got anything else for Mr. Hire here?
Yeah. As always, Kyle, where can people keep up with you and what you got going on? What are your socials?
I'm mostly active on Instagram. It's at 15_Kyle H. You can find me on Facebook as well. Happy to chat there. That's a fine route to message me as well. A lot of people will use that. And for emails that are pertaining to Gridlife, Kyle@grid.life is a great place to go. I can't solve all your problems, but if it's related to the broadcast or the club, I'll be the go-to for that. I super appreciate you guys having me on. Super fun time, and I think we touched basically everything, so super stoked.
Yeah, absolutely. I am, man, I'm already, I know it's so far away, but I'm already looking forward. Even though I don't think I will be driving at Carolina. I'm planning to be there, even though I'm not going to be driving as much this year, still thinking about going to a couple events just to go. And I think that is a testament in and of itself to Gridlife. You put on such a good event that, I see this multiple times, that you have drivers, you have crew members who they show up to events just because they want to see the racing, they want to see the spectacle. They're fun events to go to, and so that may be a little bit of me this year, but I'm looking forward to it. 2026, I think it's going to be a fantastic year, even though it's a little bit fewer events, but that's okay. They're going to be phenomenal Gridlife events, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I'm also stoked because I'll be at all of them next year. My SRO duties, I've bailed out of that in anticipation of this new role. So I'm all in on Gridlife for the foreseeable future. So I'm excited to see everyone in April.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can definitely expect me to be, for ones I'm not at, I'm going to be sitting on the couch watching the live stream, sending Kyle messages or trying to keep up to date with what's going on. I'll be keeping up with social media, and then I'll be sending Kyle messages and being like, hey, this is so-and-so is doing this, or like at Pitt, I was like, oh, Alan Patton, you guys were like, he switched to the Supra GT4 car, not sure why. And I was like, oh, they blew up Kyle's Supra, so they're switching, so yeah, exactly. So
awesome.
It's going to be awesome. For the rest of the winter, we're definitely going to keep content coming at you guys. We're going to try and keep you updated with what's going on in the time attack world. Speaking of which, totally random, but just some news that came out. It'll be a couple weeks old by the time this comes out, but World Time Attack Challenge have put out their dates for, I think it's going to be a beginning-ish of September for 2026. So they're putting out dates. You have a lot of schedules out so far for 2026. We're going to continue to talk about all this stuff. We've got more people coming on. We've got some other good content. We're going to be also talking about history of Time Attack. So we've got a lot of good stuff coming at you guys to keep you guys entertained over the winter while you're wrenching on your cars in the garage, maybe listening to the podcast. We're going to try and do what we can to help you guys out. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Perfect Lap Podcast. We also have a website, perfectlappodcast.com. You can email the show if you want to get in touch with us that way, maximumattack@perfectlappodcast.com. Again, we release episodes usually every other Thursday. You can find those on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and we are now on Amazon Music. We've had some requests from people to stream our podcast from there, so we've got everything hooked up for that. As always, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode with the voice of Gridlife, Kyle Hire. For all you time attackers out there, keep pushing, go fast, take chances. We'll see you in the next one.